Thank you for clicking in this video. In this gripping tale of survival, trust is shattered, fear takes hold, and escaping the shadows may be the only way to stay alive.
The waves crashed against the rocky shoreline, their relentless rhythm a stark reminder of the power that lay within the ocean's depths. The sound was like a drumbeat, heralding the beginning of something far more sinister than any storm. My name is Edward, and I was one of the few who survived the nightmare that began when we brought the organism to the surface. A mistake that would haunt me forever. It all started on a cold, overcast morning off the coast of Alaska. The research vessel, Endeavour, was swaying gently on the swells as we prepared to retrieve the deep-sea submersible. We had been on this expedition for weeks, scanning the abyssal plains for any signs of life that had yet to be catalogued. The excitement on board was palpable. After days of finding nothing but barren seafloor, we had finally discovered something extraordinary. "Edward, come take a look at this," Dr. Harris, the lead marine biologist, called out. His voice was tinged with a mix of awe and disbelief. I hurried over to the monitor where the live feed from the submersible was being displayed. The screen showed a glowing, pulsing mass nestled within a crevice on the ocean floor. It was unlike anything we had ever seen. An iridescent, bioluminescent organism that seemed to breathe with an eerie, almost hypnotic rhythm. "What the hell is that?" I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. "We don't know," Harris replied, his eyes fixed on the screen. "But we're going to find out." The decision was made quickly. The submersible's manipulator arm carefully extracted the organism and placed it in a containment unit, which was then brought to the surface. As it emerged from the depths, I felt an inexplicable sense of dread wash over me. A primal fear that I couldn't quite shake, even as we secured the containment unit in the ship's lab. The organism was larger than we had anticipated, nearly 3 feet across, its surface undulating with an unsettling, almost sentient fluidity. It emitted a soft, blue light that filled the lab with an otherworldly glow. Despite the precautions we took, there was an unease among the crew. The sea was vast and filled with mysteries, but this was something different, something that shouldn't have been disturbed. As the days passed, strange things began to happen on the ship. It started with the lights, flickering at odd intervals, even though the electrical systems had been checked and rechecked. Then came the dreams, vivid, terrifying dreams of the ocean swallowing us whole, pulling us down into the blackness where the organism had been found. We all had them, though none of us spoke of it openly. One night, I woke up to the sound of someone muttering in the darkness. I stumbled out of bed and followed the voice to the lab, where I found Dr. Harris standing in front of the containment unit, his eyes wide, unblinking. He was whispering in a language I didn't recognize, his hands pressed against the glass as if in prayer. When I called his name, he turned to me, his expression blank and distant. "Are you all right, Harris?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He blinked, as if coming out of a trance. It's speaking to me, Edward. It's alive. More alive than we could have imagined." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean?" "It wants to go home," he said simply, his gaze returning to the organism. "It needs us to take it back." I grabbed his arm, trying to pull him away. "Harris, you're not making any sense. It's just an organism, a life form we've never seen before, but it's not." "You're wrong," he snapped, yanking his arm free. "It's not just a life form, it's intelligent. It's communicating with me." Fear gnawed at the edges of my mind. "We need to isolate this thing, keep it contained until we understand what we're dealing with." But Harris was beyond reason. He lunged for the containment controls, and in the struggle, the unit cracked, releasing the organism into the open air. The lights surged and then went out completely, plunging the lab into darkness. All I could see was the faint, sickly glow of the organism, now free, now pulsing with a newfound energy. In the chaos that followed, the crew turned on each other. There were whispers in the dark, voices that weren't our own, urging us to do unspeakable things. I watched as my colleagues succumbed one by one, their eyes glazing over as they walked into the sea, called by a force they could neither understand nor resist. I tried to fight it, but the pull was overwhelming, like the undertow of a powerful current, dragging me down into the depths. Days turned into weeks, and we lost all sense of time. The crew began to change, their skin taking on a pale, translucent quality, their movements becoming more fluid, more aquatic. I isolated myself in the radio room, desperate to call for help, but the equipment had been destroyed. I was alone, the last vestige of humanity on a ship filled with creatures that had once been my friends. And then I heard it, the voice. It wasn't just in my head. It was everywhere, surrounding me, penetrating me. Edward, it whispered, join us, return to the sea. You belong with us now. I fought it with every ounce of strength I had left, but it was no use. The transformation had already begun. My skin felt tight, stretching over something that wasn't quite human. My thoughts were no longer my own, consumed by the call of the ocean, by the need to be one with the depths. In my final moments of clarity, I realized the truth. The organism wasn't just a creature. It was a virus, a parasite that infected everything it touched, turning us into mindless extensions of itself. The ocean was its home, and we were merely vessels, pawns in its relentless expansion. The coastline was already lost, the cities next in line, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I stumbled out onto the deck, the salty air filling my lungs as I gazed out at the endless expanse of water. The ship had drifted far from land, the shore a distant memory. The crew, no, the creatures, stood at the edge, their eyes glowing with the same eerie light as the organism. They turned to me as one, their voices merging into a single, haunting chorus. Join us, Edward. The ocean awaits. And with that, I felt my resistance crumble. The water called to me, its depths promising peace, unity, an end to the struggle. I took a step forward, then another, until I was standing at the very edge, the cold spray of the waves licking at my feet. But just as I was about to surrender, to let the ocean take me, a flash of memory cut through the haze. My wife, my daughter, their faces swam before me, a lifeline to a world I had almost forgotten. I couldn't do it. I couldn't leave them behind, couldn't let the ocean claim me as it had claimed the others. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my chest as I fled back into the bowels of the ship. I barricaded myself in the engine room, knowing it was only a matter of time before they came for me. I had to find a way out, a way to warn the world before it was too late. But the voices, they were relentless, insidious, worming their way into my thoughts, eroding my will to fight. As I cowered in the darkness, I heard footsteps approaching. I knew what was coming, knew that there was no escape. The door creaked open, and there they stood, my friends, my crewmates, now twisted, monstrous reflections of the people they once were. They reached out to me, their eyes glowing with that terrible, inescapable light. Edward, they whispered in unison, it's time. I closed my eyes, bracing for the end. But then, through the fog of fear and despair, a thought occurred to me. A desperate, irrational thought, but one that sparked a glimmer of hope. The organism had been brought to the surface, but perhaps it could be returned to the depths. Maybe, just maybe, I could reverse the curse if only I could destroy it before it consumed me completely. With a surge of adrenaline, I lunged for the control panel, activating the ship's self-destruct sequence. The countdown began, a monotonous, mechanical voice echoing through the corridors. The creatures hesitated, their connection to the organism disrupted, their unity fractured. I knew it was a long shot, but it was all I had left. As the final seconds ticked away, I made my way to the escape pod, my vision blurring, my body rebelling against every step. I could feel the transformation accelerating, my humanity slipping away, but I forced myself to keep going. The pod door slammed shut behind me, and I launched myself into the abyss just as the ship erupted into flames. For a moment, there was silence. Then the ocean swallowed the wreckage, the fiery glow extinguished by the cold, in different depths. I floated in the dark, the only sound the frantic beat of my own heart. Had I done it? Had I saved myself, saved the world from the virus that had claimed my crew? But as the pod began to descend, I felt a presence, something ancient and vast, lurking just beyond the edge of my awareness. It was the organism not destroyed, but awakened. And as I stared into the blackness, I realized with dawning horror that I hadn't escaped at all. The ocean had claimed me, just as it had claimed them, and there was no going back.
If you want to watch another story, there is another video appearing on your screen now. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more spine-chilling stories.